Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Teamwork a Better Way. I'm Christian Napier, and I am joined, as always, by my dear friend and co-host extraordinaire, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how you doing?
Good to be with you again. We just missed each other over the weekend. I saw you on Friday. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, we did have a good weekend. Just spent a little bit of time with family. Had a busy Saturday. How about you?
Well, what did I do? Yes, worked, mountain biked. I was out there mountain biking, and I was getting passed up by a lot of folks, but I noticed most of them had e-assist, and so I didn't feel so bad after that.
Hey, that's a great lesson to learn, right? Don't necessarily need to compare yourself to other people, especially when it's apples and oranges. Uh, so I am really curious. This is a very clumsy way to segue to our guest, right? Because um,
I think it's perfect.
the name of your company, the company that you had, you're the CEO of Altium Leadership and also Team Coaching International. But
Yeah,
Altium, that's an interesting name, and it reminds me of the kind of the Olympic slogan with Citius Altius Fortius, right? Like faster,
exactly.
higher, stronger, right? So
Right.
that's what we're trying to do with Altium, right? You're trying to get people to that top level, to get to a higher level, to get teams to perform at a higher level. And I can't think of anybody better to have on to talk about getting to a higher level than our next guest. So, Spencer, why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Absolutely. Today we have Jeff Jones, who is a respected performance coach who specializes in building mental toughness, Christian, and elite team culture through his signature 10 rep framework, which is a practical system designed to really develop mindset, focus habits, discipline, and confidence in high performers and those who really want to perform at their best. And so I can't wait to hear about how that applies to the professional world as well. And he's got 20 years of coaching experience, coaching at the collegiate level. He's been a part of championship teams like Arkansas State, Boise State, Auburn, Appalachian State, and across his many stops, his teams have earned conference championships in the Sun Belt, SEC, and WAC. He's had 11 bowl appearances and a trip to the 2013 BCS National Championship with Boise State. I think that's right, Jeff. Is that right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then he works with athletes, coaches, high achieving organizations who want more than motivational speeches. They want a repeatable system that forge mental toughness and who you become through those daily reps. And he holds a bachelor's degree in exercise science, health promotion, and a master's degree in curriculum instruction. And his mission, Christian, is super simple: train your mind with intention through daily reps. That's your edge. Welcome, Jeff. We're so glad to have you.
Yes. Well, thanks for the great intro. I appreciate that. Honored and humbled to be on here with you guys.
Well, I have several questions, but I just love to hear a little background. What got you into this field? I mean, what got you into coaching? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So growing up, I'm a huge sports fan. I love athletics. I've loved football. I've loved training. So back then, it wasn't performance training; it's lifting weights. And I remember sixth, seventh grade lifting weights with my buddies, and I fell in love with it. I remember reading way back in the seventh, eighth grade just about training, and I didn't know anything then. And I went to college at Central College, and I wanted to do exercise science. Even at that time, though, I didn't realize I could be you could be a performance coach. I didn't really realize, there's strength and conditioning coaches and all that stuff. And I had a strength coach that came in my junior year, and he just really changed the trajectory of my life. And he let me know, hey, you can be a strength coach. This is what you can do for the rest of your life. And I found that deep passion for strength and conditioning, or I call athletic performance. And I was not a high academic achieving student, and but this athletic performance I loved, and I became obsessed. And since then, I'm 42 years young. I've been coaching for 20 years. And each year I feel I'm having more fun. There's more joy, and then there's just so much more fulfillment even than when I started year one.
I love that. I love that you're excited and have energy in what you do. That makes life so much easier. There's always challenges, even if you're doing something that you love. That just makes it easier. My first question for you, Jeff, is you know you have been studying high performance for this past 20 years that you've been coaching. And I think one of the things that you've been doing is that you've been looking at people who have mental toughness. And that's what positive psychology does, right? It looks at positive outcomes and says, how do we replicate those positive outcomes? But I'm gonna challenge just for a second. I'm gonna go to the negative side. We live in a world right now where, in my opinion, resilience, the current culture seems to be enabling fragility. I don't know if you see that. I just we have this comparison culture, right? With social media. I know that adolescent suicide rates have gone down since 2020, but still they are so much higher than they need to be. But we have this culture that I fear enables fragility, and so my question is, I mean, you're working in this sports field where athletes are probably comparing themselves against each other. They're comparing themselves against themselves. They're comparing their team against the other team. What are the rankings and what are the ratings? And so there must be so much pressure for people to get to the next level. How do you manage that and not become fragile or it become sucked into that culture that exists today? I don't know if that's a great place to start, but that's just my question.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And Spencer, the way I look at it is, okay, society's changed. The phones have changed the game. People talk about athletes these days. They're so much more different. I'm not going to play that game. Well, let's be aware of what's going on out there. Yeah, they are a little bit different. But one thing I think about too, Spencer and Christian, is I think kids these days, whatever you want to say, I think they're tough. I think they're resilient. Can you imagine us growing up with how our youth are growing up right now, or even our college kids? Can you guys imagine going to college with the distractions, with the phones, with all that stuff going on? To me, I couldn't. So I am going to be understanding of what's going on, and I'm not going to compare them from a different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on what I can control. Okay, so everybody can say people are fragile out there, blah, blah, blah. Everything's changing, so much comparison. What I'm going to do is I'm going to study elite performers. I'm going to study ways to elevate, to improve our athletes daily, to improve myself. And then I'm going to focus relentlessly on what I can control. And what I can control is my mindset, how I train my mind, how I grow, how I develop, my attitude, my approach, how I see the world, the discipline I have, and then the effort I have. So like those are things I can control. So I'm not going to get caught up in all the craziness and everything out there. I'm going to reset every day. I'm going to attack today, and I'm going to go relentlessly all in on those things that I can control first.
I just want to say amen to that, because so often we hear, I mean, in professional circles, we got to learn about how to address the different generations. I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, these kids, there's no way that I could have dealt with the distractions that they deal with. So I think they're actually tougher than we were. So I agree with you. I think that's the right approach.
But nobody wants to say that, though. And I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people.
But so too many are saying, "Oh, there's we have to deal with them. How do we deal with them? Kid gloves." And I'm like, "Stop it." Anyway, go.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that.
So you mentioned several points that are part of your kind of 10 reps framework, right? And so I'm curious if you could just maybe break it down for our viewers and listeners, how you came up with this framework. Like, how did this thing evolve, because I think the framework is really, really interesting. And so maybe you could just kind of give us a little bit of, a very high level explanation of what the framework is, and then how you ended up coming up with this framework.
Yeah. So this is how it all started. 20 years I've been coaching. First 10 years, purely strength, power, speed, build resilience in the athlete's body. How can I come up with the best training program to maximize our athlete's genetic potential? And then through those 10 years, you read, you study, and what I figured out was that was becoming pretty empty if it was all about just a physical performance side. And then I also saw a lot of things where athletes, you get frustrated where some athletes just aren't reaching their potential. There's just so much more for them to give. There's so much more meat on the bone, and they're just not coming close to being that best version of themselves. So as a coach, you see, okay, how can we help improve this? How can I become a better coach so we don't have some of these issues? And really what it came down to was a lot of it's mental. When you think of most athletes not becoming the best version of themselves, most of it's mental. I'll also say, when you think of business leaders, when you think of teachers, when you think of doctors, lawyers, when you think of whatever you are, you reaching your potential, becoming that best version of you, it's mostly going to be the mental. So when I think about that, it's like, okay, so we have mental limitations. How can we train it? How can we improve it? And then over the last 10 years, I became obsessed with positive psychology. I love that you said that, Spencer. I've studied that a bunch. Performance psychology, sports psychology. I've been reading all different great coaches, great leaders, thought leaders. I'm just reading everything I can. And there's a lot out there. And then I took some courses, I took some certifications, and I started teaching it more intentionally. So I started with some workbooks, and I started some small groups with our players, and then I started teaching our performance staff. And what it really came down to was mental toughness. It comes down to reps. Every single day, we are putting in reps. My question is, are those reps intentional? And the more intentional we can be with our daily reps, what's going to happen is the better we're going to become. Because I talk to our athletes all the time about reps aren't going to get you better in here today. Intentional reps are what's going to get you better. And that goes the same for a daily life. So then, I put together this 10 rep framework that is built off of 10 different skills. Skills that you can drill, skills that you can improve. And so I want to keep this stuff very simple. I don't want to be complex. I don't want to use these big words. I don't want to try to sound really smart, because when we get complex and we try to use these big words and we want to show off how smart we are, what happens is I think that gets in the way of execution. So I wanted to create a framework that is simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but I want it to be simple to understand. And then we need to do drills that go with each rep, because these drills are going to improve skills. And these skills are mental skills we're training. So we're going to be doing mental drills. And then I wanted to put this framework together that is easy to teach. And no matter where you're at on your journey, we all can get better at it. I feel pretty good about it. But you know what? I need to get so much better at these reps. These reps have changed my life. They have elevated my life. And I've gotten so much feedback from other athletes and performers too, how they've helped change their life. But guess what? There's more work to do. We're a work in progress. You think I'm perfect at all 10 reps? You think just because I know the title of a rep, that means you execute it intentionally in your life? No. So let's stop thinking about, oh, I know that word. I know what gratitude and well-being is. I don't have to train it. No. We know what gratitude and well-being is. We need to train that intentionally every single day if you want to reap the benefits and the power of gratitude and well-being.
I love that mental toughness is not something that you have or don't have. It just comes down to reps. I was telling Christian in our opening discussion, I mountain bike. I'm 61, and I'm 300 pounds. So dragging my carcass up the top of the hill is not, is no small task. I've broken a few bikes and gears, just because of the pressure I put on it. But what I notice is that there's this trend that when I regularly get up and exercise, whether it's going to the gym or going for a ride, it's a habit that keeps me going. I can, if I allow myself, if I justify not getting up because I'm old, I'm tired, I deserve a break, it's very easy to get into that rut where I'm just okay. I'm okay. But if I keep pushing, it's easy to continue to grow. And then I see myself, okay, hey, I did this time last time. Let's see if I can beat it this time. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but I don't compare myself to everybody else because I do get annoyed when people pass me a lot, but because I'm like, all right, they're not my age, and I'm like, all right, I'm happy. But I want to hear more about this idea of reps and those 10 steps. But before I do, we've got a couple of comments on social media. Our good friend listener Kevin Martin says, lifelong learning to improve is the spark that renews the mind, restores the soul, and fuels the passion to stay curious. You're as old as you allow your mind to believe. For me, it's your own vision, values, and velocities. You'll go further based on those three elements. What say you? And thank you, Kevin. What do you think about that? You're only as as old as you allow your mind to believe.
And I don't know if you caught it there in the intro. I said I'm 42 years young.
Yes.
I feel as good at 42 as I did 22. And a lot of it's a mindset too. And it's a mindset because when you believe that, you're also going to take more action in taking care of yourself. And right. I give our players crap all the time. Like it's kind of funny. We have a 7th year senior on our football team, or even 5th year seniors. They want to act like they're old. Oh, I'm old now. I'm 22, 23. I go, no. I don't ever want to hear you're old. I don't want to hear that because, hey, you go to the NFL, you're now the youngest guy on the roster. And you think complaining about you being old is going to do anything for you to enhance any type of performance or mindset that you're trying to build? Yeah. So, like, the age thing, man, and it's kind of funny, too. Like, I'm 42. I probably have the most energy now than I did ever in coaching. I'm on year 20. I have more joy. I have more love for what I'm doing than I ever have. So I love that part of the age.
Keep that going. And Zena, thank you for listening all the way from Montreal. I'm glad to see you joining us. Thank you. Hey, it's fun. We got a couple of online listeners. So.
Yeah. So this is really, really cool. It brings to mind a lot of questions. But one of the questions that I have, which may be a little bit weird, is you've given yourself the latitude to go explore this, right? Sometimes, like, we're in an organization, you may not be the head of the whole thing, right? You've got a head coach, and you've got offensive and defensive coordinators and special teams coordinators and strength and conditioning folks. There may be a desire, or depending on the team cultures, there may be a, hey, stay in your lane kind of a thing. But you kind of said, all right, well, I'm helping on the physical things, but I see a need here on the mental side, and I'm going to go explore that thing. And I'm curious, the teams that you've worked with, how they reacted to, say, you with this desire to go and expand your horizon. Because sometimes in organizations, we just think, okay, well, that person's responsibility is X, and that other person's responsibility is Y. And if this person wants to do something outside of X, well, then, he's stepping on other people's toes, or he's doing this, that, or the other. So I'm just curious to hear from your experience, how you, with your, I would say, insatiable desire to grow your knowledge, how the teams reacted to this desire to kind of go beyond the traditional strength and conditioning and go more on, include the mental stuff. how was that received?
Yeah, I don't think that's a weird question at all, Christian. I think that's a great question. And I'm just going to talk to you about my last 5 years, is because, over the 10 years, I've really gotten into it. But I felt I've taught it better the last 5 years, and I've been more intentional with it. But also each year, I've felt that I've grown in how I teach it and how we present it and the impact it's made. So what I'll tell you is it's different. Not, you could say, oh, all strength, strength coaches are known for the physical performance side. But what I think about is, and I got this from a longtime Hall of Fame coach in Iowa, is what he said is, if all I ever do is teach our athletes how to block and tackle, and that's it, I failed them as a coach. And that came from Ed Thomas, who is a Iowa high school football coach. And what he meant by that is, if so how I take that is, if all I do is get people faster, stronger, more explosive, I failed them. Because life in football is so much more than being faster, being stronger, and more explosive. So then, how I would teach the mental game is, I'm not setting guys down and turn the lights off and making them breathe and do visualization. What I talk to them about is what it's going to do for their game and their life. So I'm really passionate about this, but I also understand, if I'm not selling it and letting them know how this will make them a better football player, a better performer, how it will give them an edge and advantage in their football life, and then I also equate it to when football's done, it's going to give you an advantage and edge after that. So I'm really big with, number one, I got to sell this stuff. I can't just talk about it. I got to really get them locked in on how this can make them better. And then I give it to them in bite-sized increments. I'm not over speaking. I'm not doing these huge presentations. I'm not over talking, because I want them to stay locked in. And I understand not everybody is going to grab onto it. Not everybody's going to take this resource and use it to elevate their life. So what I do is I don't keep score, because I know not everybody's into it. But also what I know is, usually it's our higher performing athletes, our higher achievers. They want to find ways to get better. So what they do is they take that stuff. And I've gotten so much feedback from our high performers, from other guys that are seeking, trying to find ways to get better, how it's changed their life. And they are so appreciative. And I've gotten a lot of feedback, even from transfers would come in, and they would be like, oh my gosh, you guys do mental performance here? Man, this is different. Like, this is awesome. And they would love that. But also, there's people that don't come close to their potential, and they just don't see the value in it. And they're not locked into it, and they're not taking advantage of the resource. And that is what it is. But I'm not going to let that affect me and how I show up. Maybe I can talk to them more and find some better ways to teach and to get to them. But I'm not going to let that get me down, because you're rarely going to go 100 for 100 and be 100% in this stuff. But you just got to keep showing up, keep teaching, keep believing, and keep attacking that way.
So a little while ago, you were talking about intentional reps, and we want to make a jump to the professional world. And when we talk about leaders, we're not talking about necessarily a leader of the organization, but leaders are those people that are taking the opportunities that you're giving them and applying them to their life and be an example to others. In our opinion, but how does a leader know the difference between going through the motions and intentionally doing the reps that you talk about? And how do I know what I'm actually doing when I'm out there pushing myself? How do I know I'm being intentional and activating the mental game or part of this as you're talking about?
Yeah, so here's how I'd say about that, Spencer, is, number one, are you being intentional with how you shut it down the night before? Because everybody talks about AM routines, how important morning routines are. Absolutely, they are. And we talk about how important today is. Rep 4 is called Attack Today. Today is the most important day of your life. If every day you can wake up, put 2 feet on the ground and attack today and truly believe and execute, with today being the most important day of your life, imagine that version of you a year from now, or even 6 months from now, or even a month from now. But what I'm saying about intentional reps is PM routine. Today started last night. So, number one, how'd you shut it down? Most high performers understand the value of sleep and being well rested and recharged. So, what's your PM routine look like? Are you on your phone till 11 p.m.? Are you scrolling for 3 hours? Are you getting that blue light into your brain so it disrupts your sleep patterns? So now you can't get your deep sleep. So now you're affected when you wake up. Are you watching Netflix? Are you doing other things? How are you shutting it down? And are you intentional with shutting it down? Because today started last night. Then we talk about aim routine. How do you start your day? Do you wake up? Do you hit snooze? Do you keep hitting snooze? Do you put both feet on the ground and you just listen to how tired you are? All the negative thoughts about all the stuff you got to do. I don't want to do this. Or I didn't want to have this meeting. And are you looking through your lens, your day, of a lens of, I have to do those things? Well, to me, that's being lackadaisical. That's being very casual. You're not really purposeful or intentional with how you start your day. So we're talking about being intentional. We're just going to stick with PM and AM routine. An intentional PM routine is, hey, I have a 9:30 bedtime that the lights are off and I do a shutdown complete. I'm not on my phone 30 minutes. Before that, I have a series of prayer or meditation, or you have something that you do and it's very consistent, and you shut it down at this time. You get your sleep. You wake up 2 feet on the floor. You wake up when your alarm says it's going off, not when you don't keep hitting snooze. And then you talk to yourself. Because if you're not talking to yourself, you listen to how tired you are, all the things you have to do. So you start talking to yourself about what you get to do, about how you're grateful, about how you're going to attack this day, about how you're going to dominate this, about how, you just keep putting in your mind all these things that you're really grateful for and all these things you get to do today. And then how you're going to dominate that.
That is great advice. I have 2 questions online, Christian. So let me throw them up. First is Kevin. This is for you, Jeff. How does the resilience of 1 or 2 people with discipline and consistency impact the culture of a team?
Yeah, for sure it can. And I've seen it time and time again. When you got high performers and high achieving leaders, it's going to affect others. But also, Kevin, in my experience too, and there's this study out there where close proximity to a low performer, they're going to drag you down 30%.
That's his second question. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
That's exactly his second question. Can a small group impact the negative energy of a large team and change the success trajectory? Or is it individual sport? So yes, keep going.
There's no question. So, and then if you're around a high performer, what the study says is it only elevates 15%. So it shows the power of negativity and having your inner circle being more lower performers, or people not on the same path as you, or have the same goals or values or mission as you.
So it sounds like that's why you're not getting after those people that are not really getting the mental part. You're just focused on the ones that are accepting it. So you're not adding to the negativity.
Yeah, and I want to care for them, and I'm there for them, and I want to coach them still. I'm not going to forget about them, but I'm not going to let it ruin my day or affect how I coach others.
That's so important. I'm sorry to interrupt. But I have this problem, Jeff. If I speak all over the world, and I'm much better now, but it used to be that I wanted to get everybody. And I would focus in on the one person that I could tell that I wasn't getting or reaching, and I would focus on them. And it's such a bad idea, because then you lose everybody else. That's my natural tendency.
And that takes training, though.
Yeah.
It takes training, because same with me, I would let the actions of a few affect the many. Yeah. And as you grow and mature, you understand, okay, when I'm focusing on this few, I'm not able to coach and affect these other guys who are excited to be here, who are attacking, who want to be coached, who want to be better. And it's just, and believe me, still happens. Am I
Yeah,
perfect at it?
you got
No.
to be intentional about not
Yes.
not reacting. So
Yes. But I'm just better at it.
here's Zena, who has a doctorate in psychology and is an executive coach, PCC,
Awesome.
very impressive. What
Yeah.
I hear you talking about, Jeff, is the psychology of performance. It is about self-awareness, which is so important, as well it is about growth mindset and understanding grit.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you said. A couple things there is the self awareness. So, rep 8 is awareness. And for me, rep 8, it's the hardest rep. Like, I love all the reps, all of them have impacted my life. And then when I teach these reps, so like if I'm just teaching rep 1 mindset and then rep 5 habits, when I prepare to teach it, I'm going over everything, I'm reading everything, and it's like setting in my mind, this rep has changed my life this way. So every time I teach these reps, I'm like, yeah, this is my favorite rep, and this is why, and I actually mean it because I'm it's putting in all the ways that it's affected you in a positive way. Rep 8 though is not my favorite rep because it's a really hard rep. It's really hard to have that awareness. It's really hard to look at your weaknesses. It's hard to get feedback from people you care about and you're close to. How do I need to grow and how do I need to improve? And then, like the awareness rep also is about life is supposed to be hard. And if you think it's supposed to be easy, that might be your biggest obstacle for you leveling up because you think things are supposed to be easy. So when you also have an awareness of life is going to be hard and you just know that's how it is, you're going to have a better response to attack those hard things when they come at you compared to the person where life's supposed to be easy and when it's hard I get shaken and it throws me off my game. So there's a lot of things that go in awareness.
Sorry, man, there it happened.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so this conversation is awesome and it's really fascinating. One of the questions I have for you, we talk a lot about, hey, and we hear this in the workplace, right? You got to work hard, all right? Okay, but I'm guessing, and I'm not an expert in these things, but looking at it from a lay perspective, I look at this and say, okay, success could be a combination of effort and technique, right? And we may sell the technique short. The 10 reps are basically techniques, dimensions. And so I'm curious, in your experience, is for the people who don't make it work, are they lacking effort, or are they not applying the technique correctly? Sometimes people try something, it doesn't seem to work out, they get bummed out because they don't see results right away. I gave it a shot, I tried, and maybe some of that is just a lack of patience, but sometimes I wonder if in today's workplace, for example, sometimes we go about trying to do things and we hit a wall, and maybe we're not using the right technique. I'm just curious what your thoughts are about effort and technique.
Yeah, and are you kind of asking just of how it compares to the lower achievers that I work with, or is that where you're going there?
Yeah, like because sometimes, okay, I get up, I do the thing, I'm trying, but maybe with lifting weights or something like this, technique can have a big impact on the results. Maybe I'm doing the thing incorrectly, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I'm curious when it comes to the mental stuff, where technique has a role, because sometimes I feel like I'm trying really hard and I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and I'm not really seeing the results that I'm looking for, and maybe it's not because of lack of effort. Maybe my technique is poor.
Yeah. Okay, Christian, I got you here. the way I would look at that is I would say that the mental game, it's hard to measure because you can't see a lot of the things. Whereas in strength and conditioning, you do 1,000 squats, you're going to see that. That makes sense. I'm going to get stronger, right? We know that. In the mental game, if I do 1,000 gratitude reps, we don't necessarily, it's invisible. Like we know it, we're in our head. And if we don't see impacts maybe in that moment or with habits, we get very impatient with habits. And if we don't see those reps, I think it's hard for people to see the compound effect over a period of time, how that could impact them. Because sometimes we just want results right now. I did this moment, I did this rep, I did this habit. I'm not getting return in this moment, so maybe it's not working or it's not effective. So I think impatience is one thing. I think it's hard to see, but I'm telling you, stacking these reps, stacking these days with being intentional over a period of time, you will see the difference. But I think sometimes people try to implement new things or try to do something they haven't done before, and then within a couple of days they don't see a difference. They don't think it works and they're done. I have seen that happen.
So you've been part of these championship teams, Boise State, Auburn, Appalachian State. So what did the coaches of these championship teams maybe do that was different than the competition?
Well,
and how they're leading the people and how they're guiding the teams.
What I would say is I think that's a great question because I think there's a lot of good stuff going on out there right now. I think there's a lot of really good coaches. Even when we were winning those championships, I think the teams we were competing with had great coaches, great cultures. So I'll just speak on what I thought some of the coaches that I worked with did really well. And when I talk about the time at Boise State is we had Chris Peterson, and he's a Hall of Fame college football coach. In my mind, he's the best college football coach in the last 20 plus years. What he did so well is he was super detailed. He had super high standards, but he also had a lot of support for everybody in the organization and on the team. He cared for people. He was down to earth. He didn't think he was above people, and he cared for them. And he had this, he had a growth mindset. He's always trying to find ways to get better. And he was very intentional about creating a culture. He was very intentional about creating connection and building bonds on that team. And that's what I believe a lot of these coaches, these championship coaches, do better. Is I think they're all kind of trying to do that. I think they all understand that culture matters, connection matters, how you care for your people matters. But if you can't do that consistently, it doesn't matter. And what Coach Peterson did is he did that so consistently. Because same thing, everybody knows culture, connection, high standards, details. They know those things matter. But can you show up day after day? Can you believe in those things? Can you keep reinforcing the standard? And when the standard's not met, you address it. But then just the daily, brutal consistency of being exactly who you are and living out those values, showing up at your best. And then you stack those. I was at Boise State 6 years. You stack those. Yeah, you can have multiple championships.
Can you give an example of how Coach Peterson would and you create those moments of connections? I mean, do you have an example? You don't have to give names, but how would that happen? Because you're a busy head coach and taking time to connect with each of your players. This is a really, really important concept, but I want to hear if there's a story that you could share of how that was done.
Well, even just for my sake, I'm a 22-year-old graduate assistant, 23 years old at Boise. Yeah. I was at Division III. I'm going to Boise. I mean, I know nothing. I think I know something, but I don't know anything now looking back.
Right.
And for the head football coach to know your name, to ask about you, where you're from, and then to speak to you and just be respectful for you shows you who Chris Peterson was. And, some people might say, what's that? Say like, that's who he is. So the way he made me feel as a 23-year-old GA, imagine every player on our team, he knows them. He knows their family. But not only does he know them and know their family, he genuinely cares about you. He cares about you as a person just as much as your production on the field. And I would say probably more about you as a person. And then when people know that, what that can do for your mindset, for your belief, for how you show up, like it's just so powerful. And it sounds very simple, but believe me, that's not how every head coach is.
So the one of the number one reason why people leave an organization comes down to 4 words: people do not matter. If you turn that around, what's interesting is how many times have we talked about the 2 things that cause people to love Christian, their job, the work. The number one thing is that they know that they matter, they know that they're making a contribution, and they are valued for that contribution. What's the best way that you can do that? It's just what you're talking about. It's for the leader to not be above anyone, but to be to care for, to know that who you are, the contributions that you make, and letting you know that you do that. How does that make you feel when that coach says, "Hey, really appreciate those extra, that extra mile that you're taking, Jeff," and notices when you do that? What does that do to you?
Yeah, I mean, Spencer, think about that. How long did that interaction just take there for you to appreciate me and let me know that? Took 10
30 seconds.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could do it for 30 seconds. You could do it for 15 seconds. But just showing genuine care, using somebody's name, highlighting something positive that they did in the process, right? Fostering that growth mindset. I call it free fuel. And this is from Lee Cockrell, who used to work at Disney. He calls it free fuel, the fuel that drives human performance.
Yeah.
Appreciation, recognition, and encouragement. And if you can just be more intentional with appreciation, recognition, encouragement, you're fueling people to a higher performance.
It's coming. Wait. I pressed it in time, Christian. It just didn't respond, man. Come on.
I was going to say, Spencer, we've got a few more comments. Might want to queue them up and questions. But while that's going on, one of the questions that I've got is, and again, this is coming from a lay person's perspective, so I could be completely wrong, right? Because fans usually are on most things. We don't know what's happening in the locker room. We don't know what's going on in the program. You just see results on the field, and then you start making all kinds of assumptions. So one of the things that's been kind of controversial around here with a couple of local universities over the past few years, maybe not as much, but teams that go through a lot of injuries, right? They're like, wow, a lot of people are blowing out knees or, injuring shoulders or whatever it is. And so the fingers start getting pointed, like, well, what's going on? And oftentimes they get pointed to the strength and conditioning program. It's like, hey, who cares if my quarterback can squat 600 pounds or whatever it is? It doesn't matter because he's out with an injury. And so all that work for nothing. And maybe our strength and conditioning folks should have focused more on pliability and stuff like this to limit the injuries. When it comes to the mental aspect of things here, and the 10 reps, one of the questions that I just have in my mind is how do we ensure that we are clear about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, right? Like, okay, we're trying to achieve performance on the field. We're not trying to get our football players entered into bodybuilding competitions, right? Like, we're really focused on the performance. And so, I mean, this may sound kind of silly, right? But but when it comes to the mental aspects, when it comes to leadership, it's like, sometimes we go through these things and maybe we're not clear about the outcomes we're trying to achieve here, and we end up going down some weird paths, And so I'm curious, in the work that you do, not just in football, but also with other organizations and leaders. How do you help them make sure that what they're trying to do is actually aligned with the outcomes they're trying to achieve, and they don't get misaligned, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, so we'll focus on the football part. You talked about all the injuries and all that stuff. Yeah, as a strength and conditioning coach, that is a part of your responsibility. And I know there's a lot of factors that goes into injuries, but as a strength coach, my deal is we should never do any harm, and we need to have a sound training process that is going to build protection with our athletes. Okay, so that's our responsibility. And then, like we're talking about, are we chasing and are we investing in the right things? So for me as a coach, just because the way it's always been done, that doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. And if you're still doing what you did in the 80s and 90s or even early 2000s, you're probably getting left behind and you're probably not paying attention to what the most optimal way to train somebody is. So I think you got to have a growth mindset. Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you trying to improve? And then also, though, too, is the awareness piece. Are you evaluating each year your program, your plan? Are you looking at ways you can make it better? And then you got to have the awareness to evaluate and take a hard look at, can this be better? But then also, are you still trying to make it better by going to different courses, by going to conventions, by doing those things? So I think that piece is really important. And then what I think too is just keep the main thing the main thing. And, simple wins, simple is powerful. And I really think if we try to get too complex and we try to put too much fluff out there, I think that's going to get in the way of action, execution. And I would just challenge you, how can you simplify this? Can you still get the job done with it, with simplifying it? And do we need all the complexity or the extra stuff and this and that?
Well, I think that really helps them integrate those habits that you're teaching them, right? If they can remember them and they're doing it every day, then it actually becomes part of their life, not just, am I, being more explosive now? Am I integrating ideas that are going to impact my entire life? And we see that with a lot of people coming out of the military. They've just had these habits drilled into them that you talk about. Morning and evening routine are so important. I want to go back. Kevin asks this question, and we were talking about how even a few people can really pull down the attitude or the performance in business, in warfare, and in business. There's this idea of the fog of war. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you may be experiencing in your part of the offensive or defensive line a failure, but you're winning the play or you're winning the battle, but where you are, you're struggling, and so you've got this 20% of the group are creating these problems. How do you protect the entire team from a few people that have a negative attitude, or do you get rid of them? I mean, how do you manage that? Because it could destroy a culture very, very quickly. I personally have experienced that in business, where a few people have been the downfall of an entire organization and even my success as a leader.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard this, but I'm thinking you train them or you trade them. So you train them up, and if you can't train them, you got to trade them. And then you guys, I don't know if you've heard of the Urban Meyer 10-80-10 principle in his book with Tim Kite, Above the Line, where they talk about high performing teams and just teams in general. You have your top 10% guys where anybody could coach. They're the highest performers. They're elite of the elite. Every day they show up, exactly what they're getting. Then you have 80%. And the 80% makes up most of the team, where, that you can elevate those guys, but if you can get your 80% to grow into the top 10, so now you have a top 15, top 20, top 30%, right? Obviously, you're going to have a higher performing team. But then it is what it is. Most teams are going to have a bottom 10%. And the bottom 10% are your lower achievers. They're the ones that drive you crazy. They're the ones that aren't getting it. They're not being coachable. They're not picking it up. They're so inconsistent. They're defiant. And what you got to decide is, number one, can we train them up and can we coach them and affect them? And there's some bottom 10 percenters, maybe you can. And then there's some bottom 10 percenters that time spent coaching them would be better invested to try to get some of those 80 percenters to the top 10. Because sometimes these bottom 10 percenters, they just ain't going to change. And then you got to have that, then a decision usually has to be made if you're going to keep them, if you're going to let them go, if how you're going to move on.
Well, gosh, I look at the clock and 50 minutes have passed by already. Like, where did this time go?
Yeah, we have so much more to talk about, Christian.
I know. Well, and Kevin asked a really important question. Is this information available in a book or a publication? How can I study more?
Yeah.
So well, we're going to tee up here, Jeff.
Yeah, so I never intended on writing a book. And the seed was planted 5 years ago. I had one of my assistant coaches I was working with, and he goes, "You should write a book." Because I would do a lot of professional development. I would do this mental performance stuff with the staff. We would do it with the team. And he's like, "You should write a book." And in that moment, I'm like, I'm not going to write a book. So what I did, though, is I put together these workbooks. And I was refining these 10 reps. And each year we would teach it, and I would refine it, and I would make it better. And I had enough people in my network that are like, "Jones, you need to publish this. This is a legit, you can publish this book." And then finally, somebody got me in touch with Game Changer Publishing. I called them up, and they published this book. And the book is The Intentional Edge. And it's the intentional edge because we say this all the time is reps don't get you better. Every single day we are putting in reps. How you get better is intentional reps. And intentional reps, that is your edge. The edge against your competition, that's your edge against yourself. Like every day, we're trying to be better today than we were yesterday. Well, how can I be better today? Is I can be more intentional. I can be more intentional with how I wake up, with how I connect, with how I lead, with how I show up, with what I put in my body, with the exercise, with who I talk to, with how I execute my GSD list. Whatever it is, the more intentional we are, and the more we can be mindful of being more intentional, the better we're going to become. And I'm so sold on this. I've seen it time and time again. And the way I look at this book is it's your mental performance training center. Hey, we know if we want to become more physically fit, you have to train 2 to 3, 4 times a week. We know that. If I want to increase my mental fitness, we have to train our mind. And we can't read something once, or you can't say, "Oh, I know what focus is," or "I know what the word ownership means." Okay, that you know what that means. How are you putting in your reps for ownership? And in the book, there's ways to get your reps in. There's questions, there's drills. I challenge you because I'm challenging myself. I'm not perfect at this, but it's affected me. It's affected a lot of other lives in a positive way. And I'm still trying to upgrade. There's so much more room for me to grow. And that's why I love this stuff, is because you see that. And it's, we talk, like you said, Spencer, mental toughness. It's not talked about. It's something that has to be trained. Same with the body, same with our mind. So this book is something that I read daily. There's drills on there. And just because you read something once doesn't mean you remember it, or doesn't mean you live it. So instead of saying, "Oh yeah, I know that," or "I heard that," ask yourself, am I living that? How can I do this better in my life so I can improve, so I can grow?
Hold on. It's really slow today. Well, Kevin calls himself the Chief Encouragement Officer, the CEO.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, Kevin.
Nice to have you with us, Zena and Kevin and whoever else is. Yeah. Free fuel.
Yeah.
Christian, where are we at in the show, man? What's that? I do have a lightning round. You ready for it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, here's what's going to happen, Jeff. I'm just one, short question, short answer, maybe one word, just a short phrase. One word that describes elite team culture.
Intentional.
Discipline or motivation, which builds more?
Discipline, but motivation is important because you got to know what's in your heart and what drives you. So motivation is important, and understand motivation is a daily decision, and it's your job to motivate you.
It's what gets you moving right out of bed.
Absolutely. Yep.
The rep most leaders skip. 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, I would say honestly awareness, because it's the hardest one, and they're all impactful, but awareness to take a hard look at yourself and know the areas you got to improve at, and then go attack that.
Love that. Best mental performance advice you ever received?
Oof. Anything above 0 compounds. So you have habits, you have reps, and by you not doing those, just anything above 0 where there's some intentionality behind it, no matter how small, it's going to compound. So you still have to go, and you still have to attack, and you still got to put your rep in.
Finish the sentence. Great teamwork happens when
you're highly prepared and connected.
Your personal daily non-negotiable rep.
Mindset.
A book every leader should read besides yours.
I would say Arate by Brian Johnson.
Arate. Pressure reveals or destroys. Which do you believe?
Well, it reveals those who are mentally tough about. How about this? It reveals who you really are, whether you're mentally tough or whether you're fragile. It's going to reveal
it. The moment that tested your mental toughness the most, besides this show.
Yeah. I would say the moment that tested my mental toughness the most would be in 2019 when I was a director at Appalachian State, and just, it was one of the most winningest years I've had on the field, but internally I wasn't being authentic to who I was, and I let other people dictate my mindset. So like that required the most mental toughness, and I felt like I wasn't intentional with those reps.
Appreciate that answer. What do you know now that you wish you had? What do you know now that you wish you had known in your first year of coaching?
That people matter. It's great to learn about scheme, X's and O's. It's great to learn about the technical and tactical, but what matters most is the people and how you show up for them every day.
That's it.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's been an awesome hour here. If people want to find your book, if they want to connect with you, Jeff, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, the book is just on Amazon. It's The Intentional Edge, 10 Reps to Mental Toughness. If you want to reach out, I have a website, coachjeffjones.com. Hit that up. And then just Instagram, I'm coach_Jeff Jones.
All right, fantastic. We'll make sure to put the appropriate links in the show notes and everything. So, Jeff, thank you for an incredible hour. I mean, it's been really, really fascinating. I personally learned a lot here. I'm going to go get this book right away. Listeners and viewers, you should do the same. Thank you, Jeff, for this hour. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining us today. We really appreciate you. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon.